Coming up this week, should the federal government pay ransom for Canadian hostages? Also, following his acquittal, should Senator Mike Duffy be reimbursed for lost wages? This and much more to come. Hitting the streets, this is Outburst. Hello and welcome to Outburst. I'm Glenn McGuinness. Well, the scenario is a nightmare. Being taken hostage far from home and held for ransom, with the result being execution if that ransom is not paid. Well, that's exactly what's happening in the Philippines. One Canadian has been killed already, and the other is scheduled to die on June 13th if the federal government doesn't come up with $16 million by that time. Prime Minister Trudeau says Canada does not and will not pay ransom to terrorists. We took this difficult topic to you. Our question: what is your opinion on Canada's policy of not paying ransom for hostages?
Wow, that's a really serious subject. I agree. I have to say that I agree. I don't think the ransom sometimes can give good results because you're giving in to their demands, and sometimes it just doesn't produce any difference at the end.
Well, I think it's a correct policy. I think you put more people in danger if your policy is to pay ransom, and they'll be kidnapped left, right, and center. So I think it is a good policy. It's unfortunate, but I think it's appropriate.
Oh, yeah, I think it is. I think you sort of hit that slippery slope otherwise of who do we pay for, what is our limit, what are people worth, and I guess it sort of leaves it up to friends and family to sort of decide whether or not we negotiate with people who trade in terrorism.
I think the life of a Canadian is more important than anything else. How big is the stake? We don't know. We don't have insight into that. It's probably for the security men to decide, but I think the value of a Canadian is most above anything else. So I would say rescue them at all costs, unless it's a national security.
They should have paid the ransom, definitely. Like, he's a Canadian citizen, why wouldn't you bring him home? So I don't know, I think they should have dealt with that a little bit differently.
I think it's a good policy because otherwise it would just go on and on and on and on. And they would take advantage of that. And I don't think it would do any good at all. It wouldn't, other than maybe save one person at a time. But I think it eventually wouldn't even do that. So.
Well, it's unfortunate, but it makes sense. It's unfortunate for the people, obviously, who get kidnapped and are in that situation, but it makes sense for countries not to do that.
How come?
It's a slippery slope.
I think it's a good policy. It's dangerous to start a precedent where you pay ransom to kidnappers because it encourages future kidnapping and puts everybody at danger. So I agree with the policy.
I think it's a good idea. I'm old enough to have lived through when all the airplanes were being taken hostage, and it just seemed to encourage more of that. So I think it's the right decision for the government.
Lives come before money, obviously, in my opinion, and so that's where I stand on that.
Well, I think it has to vary about who is the hostage and what it stands for as well. But in the long term, I don't think it's a good thing to get into because they're just going to start taking more hostages eventually.
So you think it could maybe endanger Canadians then?
It could, yes.
I agree with that because then you open up the door for other people to take hostages. So I agree with that, actually. It's sad, but that's just the way it has to be.
I actually think that the government should do whatever they can to get people back, and that may include paying money. But that's my opinion, yeah. Yep.
Some people are arguing if you do that, it might endanger Canadians more. That's not a concern?
I think Canadians are probably going to be targeted anyways because we're obviously representatives of a free democratic society. And I think what happens. I don't think the paying ransom or not paying ransom is going to change that.
Well, that's a tough one. I definitely do see the family side of things, and about needing help and so on. But that does set a really dangerous precedent. So I understand the government's point of view about not paying the ransom and trying to work through other channels to try to get those people back.
Just similar to what we do in war is, there are people out there that they die for a cause. They die to protect the better interests of the rest of the larger population. And as horrible and awful and tragic as it is for someone to lose their life, I don't know that we can give in to terrorists and give in to hostage taking and set that precedent.
Yes, in all cases, the ransom should be paid. But also, negotiations should be made so that it doesn't have to come to that person being murdered.
I guess I can understand their stance. They don't want to, I guess, negotiate with kidnappers and ransom and all that. But at the same time, it is someone's family member, and it is a member of a community. So it's kind of disappointing that they wouldn't even consider it.
Which invention is Sir Sanford Fleming known for? Standard time, insulin, or basketball?
Standard time.
Insulin? I'm going to say basketball.
Insulin.
I think insulin.
I don't know.
Standard time, insulin, or basketball?
Insulin, I guess.
Standard time.
It is standard time. Very good. You got it right. You weren't sure there, were you?
No.
Sir Sanford Fleming emigrated to Canada from Scotland. He proposed the present system of standard time, by which the world is divided into 24 equal time zones. The trial of Senator Mike Duffy is now in the history books. Duffy was acquitted on all 31 charges of fraud, breach of trust, and bribery leveled against him. He was also suspended from the Senate for 2 years without pay. Well, now his lawyer feels the embattled senator has a good chance of getting back roughly $270,000 lost during the trial. So we hit the streets with this. Should Senator Mike Duffy be reimbursed for lost wages from his suspension?
Well, that's a difficult one. Just because he was found not guilty doesn't mean he did everything right. I think they were correct. There was no criminal liability. But my concern there is he probably did much the same as most other senators, based on what I understand. So if they're receiving their full pay, maybe he should get his too.
No, I don't think so. I think when you're going under trial, you shouldn't be paid salary. And I think his lawyer did a tremendous job. It was a really, really tough case. And he should be really happy and satisfied with the results and just be ready to take over again in his job.
Yeah, he has to be, because if he's not guilty and he proved it in court, he should be out nothing. Yeah, I think that's how the law is written, is it not? Why should you be out something because you were falsely accused after he had his court trial?
I put my hands up on that one. I really can't say for sure. With some of the stuff that went on, I think it was not acceptable. The rules have to be really stipulated, and they have to follow them. Otherwise, it's one of those things. I think he was just, to my way of thinking, he was taking advantage of things. Not, so, but carry on.
Yeah, yes, he should. I believe he should be reimbursed, because he was found not guilty. If he was suspended on the basis of being charged with impropriety and he was found not guilty, he should be reimbursed for that pay that he lost.
Absolutely.
How come?
Because he's been found not guilty, which means he inevitably did nothing wrong, or I guess morally wrong possibly, but he still owed that money. It would be the same as going to an arbitrator, and if an arbitrator reinstates you, it's generally with back pay and lost monies and wages. So, yeah, I think so.
Well, if he was completely acquitted, then yeah, maybe. I mean, at the same time, maybe that's just the cost of business, so to speak, of, you win some, you lose some. 31 charges is a lot of charges. I don't know if any of them were trumped up or what have you. I don't, again, know the details, but sometimes that's a tough call. If he was acquitted, then maybe he should get it back, yeah.
No, I don't believe he should, because there's a lot of hardworking people out there that get suspended without pay, and I don't think it's fair that he should be reimbursed just because he's a politician.
He is by law not guilty of those crimes, and so yes, I think he should be compensated.
I think that was just such a fiasco. I really just think that as a Canadian, I just want to be done with that whole scandal. I think we've got a new government in Ottawa. I think things are going in a positive direction, and I'm just kind of tired of hearing about Mike Duffy, and I wish that whole problem would just go away.
So no back wages. Let's move on.
Let's move on. Forward.
I have mixed feelings about that. On the one hand, he was found innocent or not guilty, so that probably is a fair thing to do. On the other hand, that's a previous government decision. So what can you do?
Based on what I know from because I did follow the trial, he was not guilty. So I think he should be reimbursed for his pay that he didn't receive.
I don't know. I think you should maybe in that case look at what would a regular normal person have to do in a similar kind of case. Would they have to pay it back or get reimbursed? And I think if a regular normal person would have to get reimbursed, then I think you can maybe look at what would be appropriate for him.
Well, I guess, yes, he should, because he was found not guilty by our justice system.
So he deserves what he missed.
Absolutely.
In what year did Kim Campbell become Canada's first female prime minister? 1985, 1993, or 1999? 85, 93, or 99?
93? 1993?
I want to say 80. I don't know.
93.
Yeah, I'll say 93. 85. 85.
93.
I also think 93.
It's 93.
Yes, okay, well, good.
Kim Campbell succeeded Prime Minister Brian Mulroney on June 25th, 1993, and served as Prime Minister until November 4th of the same year. The mandatory long-form census is back. It was axed by the Harper government back in 2010 and replaced with a voluntary national household survey. But when the Liberals took power in 2015, it was immediately reinstated. The long-form census is a survey that collects information about the demographic, social, and economic situation of Canadians across the country. In the past, some have criticized the census because of the personal nature of some of the questions, while others feel it's an important tool to keep Canada moving forward. So what's your take? Our question: how do you feel about the return of the mandatory long-form census?
Oh, I think people are delighted to have the long-form census back. I think data is important, and when we have good data, we can make good choices, and we can make good legislative choices, and so I think the long-form census is definitely a win for Canadians.
I think it's a good idea. Only 1 in 4 have to do it, but it will give our administrative people down in Ottawa something to work on and work with and whatnot. Yeah, I'm in favor of it. It might take a little bit longer, but I don't think there's any of us that don't have time to do it, sort of thing. So, yeah.
I agree with the long-form census. I think especially for gaining information about the population and the demographics, and as well for future generations, for genealogy research. I think it's very helpful to have that information. So I'm in favor of that.
I think it's probably a good idea. It doesn't take long to fill those out. Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Oh, I didn't like it. It was too long. So I got the long one. Yeah.
Was it a huge problem?
No, it wasn't. No, it was fine. Yeah, it was. I just got the short one, so I'm not complaining.
But do you think it's a good thing?
Well, they need to know. They need to know things. The government needs to figure out and plan things, so I'm sure that they need to know that information. If they can't, probably can get it from other sources, but that's
good way to get it all into the computer, I guess.
Well, I think it's long overdue. I think this relied on heavily by the federal government, provincial governments for all sorts of issues, and I'm not sure why they got rid of it to begin with.
I think it's the only way to really count everybody, and it's important that everybody takes part of it. It takes you just a few minutes to get it done. It gets delivered to your house, so I think it's an easy thing to do, and it benefits everybody.
I think it's okay. It gives the government more to work with and more information that they're probably requiring.
I support it. I don't see it, it doesn't cost us too much to do it. It's not a lot of time. And I think it's important to collect data on your country so that you understand where, the trends in your demographics, what you're moving towards, what kind of supports you need to put in place, like Jenna was saying. I did it already, and I was a little surprised by how few questions they asked. And I thought they could have collected a lot more data if it was going to be a mandatory census. I thought they could have collected a lot more and learned a lot more about the population.
I'm very happy that it's back. Unfortunately, when my wife and I went online, it was a short form, but my 91-year-old mother got a long form, lucky her. So I'm glad it's back because it just gives more organizations more information to work with.
100% agree with it. It's awesome. I was really disappointed when they got rid of that because it's such a trove of information for scientists and everybody around the world, within Canada and around the world. So I'm very happy to see that they brought it back, and the fact that it's online, so it's really easy to fill it out. You don't have to mail anything in. So.
Oh my gosh. See, my husband would love to answer this question because he was annoyed by it yesterday when he was filling it out. He found that it was kind of invasive in his privacy. So I didn't fill it out. He did, but that was I heard that all evening as he was filling it out.
It doesn't really bother me. It's a bit of time out of my day, but really it does help, I think, in the big picture of things. So it's never really bothered me.
I think that historically speaking, we get so much more information about who the actual Canadian person is and Canadian family, and you get such a better, broader picture of who we are in Canada. And I think especially with how diverse we are now as opposed to way back, I think that it would serve a really good purpose. Yeah, it takes more time, but I think it just is for also interest's sake.
I think it's okay. The more we know about people, the better in the long term to create programs that's needy or just to show what what Canada's all about, I guess.
I actually think that's a good thing because in our case we have an autistic daughter, and I think it's important to fill those things out in details, especially when you have a special needs kid, because we need the services, and right now autism services are being cut, and they need to be reinstated, especially for young adults.
Very excited. I have to say I was a little bit disappointed that the one I filled out was the short form one, but I think it's a really, really great tool for governments to actually know what's going on in the country and who's who and who is where and everything. I've worked in development projects overseas where we've done a similar kind of thing to a census, and it's so vitally important for the government to know where the people are compared to where the services are, and you can't do proper planning unless you've got the right information. So the long-form census, I think, is I can't believe they got rid of it in the first place, and I don't see any harm in people filling it out and spending an hour of their time to do it, right?
I think it's a good thing. It gives more details. I don't think it's impinging on anybody's personal rights. I think it's just data that goes into the knowledge of our country.
And how do you think that will help?
It should help with developing communities in the right directions, making them more accurate with the changes that are happening with the population all over Canada.
I think it's great. I think it's going to help us in understanding where exactly we need to start investing in infrastructure as a country. I definitely support the long-form census. I think it's going to, in terms of healthcare and understanding where those dollars are going to go or where they need to go to best serve the people.
Transporting oil can be dangerous with catastrophic results. One needs to look no further than Lac-Mégantic, Quebec. Back in July of 2013, 42 people were killed when train cars carrying crude oil collided in the town, resulting in a massive explosion. It brought to light the debate on the safest way to move crude oil. A recent study by the Fraser Institute concluded that moving oil through pipelines was a safer alternative than by rail. So now we look to you to weigh in on the debate. Our question: do you feel pipelines are the safest way to transport oil?
Absolutely. Far safer than by train, as we know from the accident in Quebec, and by truck. It's far safer by pipelines. So we should encourage more pipelines, especially the Canada East pipeline in particular.
Yeah, I've worked on pipelines quite a bit, and the quality control and quality insurance, and they got a lot of safety protocols in place where transporting it by rail or by truck, they're not held to those same standards as pipelines are. X-raying welds and all kinds of stuff that goes involved in that. Flow meters, there's a bunch to it. So it definitely is the safest way to transport oil. And right now, forest fire season, a lot of those pipelines are underground, so they're safe from all kinds of natural disasters. Definitely is a good way to go.
I'm not sure I know enough about it, but I certainly think they're as safe, if not safer, than rail. And I mean, Lac Mégantic was a perfect example of that. I don't know how many times I'm caught at a railway crossing here. I've counted up to 40 or 50 cars, oil cars. One of those derails or blows up in the city, I wouldn't even want to fathom to guess the consequences. Pipelines, I think, although they're not flawless, are probably a better way to ship.
I personally think so. And if that adds to the economy, adds value to us, I think that's a great thing to have.
I think they're as safe as traveling by train, where there's oil spills quite frequently. So, yeah. I'm not against the pipeline. Somebody will throw eggs at me.
How about you? And I'm for pipelines as well. Yeah, definitely.
Yes. With all the millions and millions of miles of pipelines and the few times that something does go wrong, and then you take, the train crashes and all that sort of stuff, no, pipelines are the way to go, definitely. And environmentally, I used to do a courier run out to the Dinsmore area west of Outlook there, and there was a pipeline going across there, and it took them about a year to get, and they didn't affect anything, and the farmer within a year was back on his soil, doing his farming and whatnot. So no, and with the new technologies and the new construction of the pipelines and whatnot, there's going to be a lot less problems with them too. So, yeah, no, that's the way to go.
Based on Lac Mégantic, probably safer than using rail, trucks. Well, I think that's sort of a short-term solution by trucking it, because you can only truck so much at a time, whereas pipelines probably have bigger volumes and capacities that they can move that stuff to wherever it needs to go.
Well, they're man-made, so no, there's a flaw in everything, so probably not. However, I know that engineering feats have come a long way, so it might be good. It's just human error is just so there, and I know that everything costs money, and to save costs, there might be a way to, so I'm not sure if it's the safest way.
It probably is the safest way, but I think that kind of infrastructure isn't really the way to go right now, because I am really hoping that this decrease in gasoline prices and oil prices will really encourage the free thinkers to come up with an alternative to gas and oil, so that we won't need them. If it's going to take them 10 years to build that infrastructure for the pipelines, hopefully we can have a better alternative within that time or shortly after.
My main concern would be Actually, funny that, the first question kind of talked about terrorists. I guess one of my concerns would be the security around these pipelines. Some of them are going through some pretty vital areas when you talk about natural resources. So, the security in terms of if somebody wanted to, make them a target by a terrorist group, then that would definitely be a concern for me.
I don't really have an answer for that. I just think that we need to be very cautious, and I think it's very disruptive to the for example, the First Nations communities. They're just putting pipelines wherever they feel like it, and I think that's very damaging to the environment. And I don't think we truly know the damage that we're causing when we do that.
That's a biggie, but I don't like transporting oil, period, and I think that we should be going to renewable energies anyway.
They're safer than transport and truck and transport, and right now we need to be, until we get to electric cars and clean energy, we need to invest in the pipelines because we need to be self-sufficient as a country.
They probably are the safest, but the issues I have with them is that because they're so extensive and they go over such a broad area, they can't always be monitored. And so if you're looking in terms of security, they're available to be attacked in some kind of way. And then you always hear stories about this pipe that's leaking for 3 days before someone notices it, and it gets into the water systems and so on. I mean, it's certainly probably the more cheaper than trying to haul it everywhere. But I just think that the cost of the environment is just too great to keep going with it.
Yes, I think they are. Definitely not rail, and definitely not shipping. Shipping like by sea. Yeah, but I think overland pipelines are the best.
In 1982, Queen Elizabeth II became the first monarch in 450 years to do what? Visit France, welcome the Pope to Britain, celebrate a Diamond Jubilee.
1982, you said?
Yes.
Oh boy. I'm going to guess on this one and say celebrate the Diamond Jubilee.
Celebrate a Diamond Jubilee? Welcome the Pope to Britain.
Yeah. The Pope?
I think so. Celebrate a Diamond Jubilee.
Welcome the Pope to Britain.
Celebrate a Diamond Jubilee?
No. Welcome the Pope to Britain.
Oh. Bam! Man, super.
All right, brother. In 1980, the Queen visited Pope John Paul II at the Vatican, followed by a reciprocal visit by the Pope 2 years later in 1982, when he became the first Pope to visit Britain in 450 years. That's all for this episode of Outburst. Just a reminder, don't forget to check out our new CPAC TV To Go app and our CPAC Quiz Canada Trivia app. For more information, check our website, www.cpac.ca. I'm Glenn McGuinness, and on behalf of all my colleagues at the Cable Public Affairs Channel, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.